Hello, everyone. This is Mike with the Franchise Business Podcast, and I am pleased to be joined today by Dana Hall. Dana is a FranNet consultant. So, Dana, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell people kind of what you do for the clients that you work with.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
You got it.
So, yes, my name is Dana Hall. I work for FranNet here in Boston, Mass. I'm one of about 80 consultants for FranNet. This is my territory in the Boston area. My background, real quick, is I was an accountant originally. Out of college, I did that for about 6 years. Decided that I liked the analytical and the sort of front of house business portion of businesses. And so I made a deliberate switch, went back to school, got my MBA, and for 20 plus years worked in operations, corporate finance, and sort of strategy, profitability improvement, and working with both operators and the finance folks. So about 5 years ago, I found myself looking for something different. Had never known what I do now even existed. And, through networking and talking to folks, I was introduced to somebody that does this. And 6 months later, I parlayed that franchise experience because I had the 20 plus years was with Wendy's International, Panera Bread, and one other organization. So a lot of franchise experience. So I understood the model, the background, what franchisees are looking for, what they're good at, the relationship. So I had franchise experience, so it made sense.
Awesome, Dana. And so when you're kind of working with your clients, what is your kind of process that you go through, or FranNet's process that you go through to kind of understand, their goals, their skills, and their financial needs and financial dreams as well before you start actually recommending franchise models to them?
I describe it as sort of a two-step process where the second step has a bunch of sort of multiple, sub-bullet points. Okay. So the first thing is just having a conversation with somebody, understanding, where they are in life. Why are we talking now? Is it because they've just always been interested? Did they go through some sort of career transition? Are they currently employed but looking for some other revenue stream? What is the situation you're in and what are you trying to accomplish? And oftentimes that first conversation kind of indicates, well, you know what, I don't think this is the best choice for you. I don't think this is an avenue you should consider. And I tell them why. And, if I'm wrong, we'll continue. But, so it's first just determining whether somebody should explore this. And if so, then it's, a more deep understanding through a couple of things. We do an entrepreneurial profile is what we call it. FranNet has it's a proprietary assessment. It really gets deep on people's value systems, their motivations, their management leadership style, their communication style. All those components are important to trying to figure out what franchise concept could potentially work for them. So that's a starting point. And then the second point is, I'll do a 2-hour, very deep interview almost like this, but conversational, and to really understand all those criteria that you just kind of alluded to.
Right.
Something as simple as, what do you want your day in life to be? Do you want to work weekends? Down to what's the investment level? So it's dozens of criteria to try to determine what's going to make sense for them and how is it going to fit, so I can make a match, because that's what we do.
Sure. Awesome. And then at that point, Dana, I think one of the big resources that you provide to your clients is the franchising world is massive. There's so many different options. And I think that can probably be pretty overwhelming for someone to navigate on their own. So how important are you as a resource to maybe distill this really hundreds and hundreds of models to something, I think, more palatable for them to really dig deep into?
Yeah, that's the education piece too, because that's a part of what I didn't mention is I'll provide, whether it's one-on-one, through webinars, through whatever, some really good core background information on what franchising is and what it is not. So debunking some myths, clarifying some things about, what it is and what it isn't, frankly. And part of that is how many different industries are there? Like, is there a franchise for this type of business versus that? And when folks realize that legally in this country, in the U.S. anyway, there's over 3,000 specific individual franchise concepts. That's daunting, right? We work with less than 10% of those companies, and we have an inventory of concepts that in a variety of industries and in a variety of investment levels, so we can have something for everybody. But I call us sort of a first, screen to all the things that you would be searching online by yourself and making your head spin, on the interweb. We're here to try to break that down into the real quality companies in every industry. So
sure. Awesome. Fantastic, Dana. And then I'm interested to maybe hear a couple of, examples of clients, maybe, not without naming names, but maybe somebody that was kind of challenging. Maybe they had some goals that might've been hard to meet, or they had some misconceptions that you had to overcome. And then you helped them do that, got them into the right business, and they've been successful, in that business.
Yeah, I have a real good example from last year. It was a husband and wife, tremendous folks. The wife was a lawyer. The husband had worked in government for years. They were very smart, very thoughtful, and very thorough, which I encourage. But the challenge there is ensuring that at some point, you've learned everything that you can learn. Is there anything missing? Let's find it. But there's an end point to anything, and the struggle there was sort of, and I never push anybody into doing something they shouldn't do or don't want to do, but there's a moment where you got to make a decision. Am I going to be a business owner? If this is the right thing, am I willing to take that leap, that final step? Because it's scary.
Sure.
Ultimately these folks did, but the wrinkle in it was the first concept that we had looked at, they kind of had waited too long, and the territory they wanted, this sounds like the used car salesman thing, but it happens, right?
Right.
The territory that they wanted was sold. Somebody else had taken it because they kind of sat on it a little bit. So we went back to the drawing board, found something else. We stuck with each other and ultimately, made that match. So that's an example of, sometimes it's just persistence and patience, frankly.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think, again, meeting people where they're at and kind of going through that process with them on at their pace is important. It sounds like you do a great job of that, Dana. And then, maybe not a challenging example, but do you have any other, particular example of somebody that chose the right business for them and has found success, building, significant revenue and something special in that business?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one too. He's been in probably a year in now. And we had talked for off and on for over 4 years. I think he was somebody that knew he wanted to do this at some point, but timing in life is so much of anything. And he was gainfully employed. He had a fantastic job with a huge software company, one of the big names. He was a very successful salesman. And that's tough to walk away from, a very good salary bonus. So even though the itch was there, it was just tough to do. And unfortunately for him, it was done to him. The company restructured, somebody had bought them, and he found himself out of work. And he immediately said, yep, I guess this is the sign. And now he owns a very large territory of a specialty commercial cleaning business in the Boston area. And he's out straight. Growing, adding folks, and not a business. You don't wake up. So many of these businesses, you don't wake up one morning and say, that's what I want to do. But we go through our process, and if it fits all those goals, then then you got to make the leap. And he did.
Yeah, I think really, sometimes people think that the sexy option is going to be the best option, but a business like that where, the margins are good and it's a industry that can be recession proof. If you can make good money, maybe you're not, it's not your interest, but it's a business that you can build and be successful. And I think a lot of people, if they think that way, will find the right model for themselves.
For sure. And if they have the transferable skill set that fits with it too.
Right, 100%, absolutely. And Dana, you've already spoken to this a little bit, but you have people with varying business or professional backgrounds. Also, as you said, I mean, you're looking at investment ranges, and I'm sure a lot of your clients have very different financial situations. So, how do you tailor your approach for clients with those various backgrounds and situations?
Yeah, it's the investment part is almost the easiest. If somebody has X wherewithal, whatever that number is that they can invest, then that's where we have to start. Some of the other criteria, parameters, wants that they have may need to change because of that. And on the other end, if that's a larger pool, like I have unlimited potential resources to be an owner, then it's more honing down on what your skills are and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I tell clients that the two things that you really need to come with it in, because a business owner can come from almost any background: engineers, accountants like myself, salespeople, marketing, school teachers, veterans. There's no like perfect avatar per se, but the two things that I caution people on and suggest that they really think about is, do they have reasonable expectations, right? I mean, investing $100,000 and expect to, make 150 within the first year, and and there's going to be no problems, like every employee is going to be perfect, like those things, that doesn't happen, right?
Right.
So that, and there is a level of grit that somebody needs to have. They know, they need to understand that there's going to be ups and downs and turbulence and good days and bad, and it's hard work. But if they come with that mindset, and you're with a good franchisor that will support you, and you work through it, it will be successful. So grit and reasonable expectations, I think, are the two things, regardless of your skill set, your background, what you did in life before. Those are the things that are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that you lay that out for people before they make a decision, so there's no surprises and they know what they're getting into. But for the right person, I mean, that can be a really exciting proposition, and they're willing to, work hard and be determined to build something. So, so Dana, kind of my last question is, and you've alluded to it a little bit, there's some misconceptions about, I think, franchising or maybe being in business for oneself. What are some of those common misconceptions that you see? And then what do you do to address those and kind of help people overcome those maybe incorrect ways of thinking?
Yeah, the misconceptions, or even the myths we call them. There's a couple of big ones that somebody says, "Oh, I'd love to be a business owner, small business, and I think franchise, because it's sort of got this system, would be good, but I don't want to run a restaurant." They think it's all fast food because it's what they see driving around. We all do. Fact check, reality. Hundreds of industries in everything outside of retail that you can think of. Home services, cost mitigation, what your firm does, B2B, that's a B2B type business, right? Yep. Service business, senior care, pet care, this any business that you see driving around other than food, there's a good chance that the mom and pop has a franchise, sister or brother. So there's just so many options. That's one. I think a lot of people believe that, the investment level, because they think it's restaurant and those are expensive, that it's all, $1 million investments. 60% of my clients will ultimately invest under $500,000. So again, there's variety there. There are excellent B2B concepts, consulting, advising, that are under 100,000, and they're, wildly successful, good, reputable concepts. So the idea that it's all massive investment is not true.
Sure.
And then the third one, probably my favorite, is that, hey, this particular business interests me, but I've never done that. So Meineke. I love cars. I like the idea of fixing cars. They're everywhere, right? They're not going anywhere. That's recession resistant, some of the things you mentioned, but I'm not a mechanic. Or Great Clips, everybody needs their haircut. I'm not a barber. Those two companies don't want mechanics or barbers. They want people that are savvy in terms of hiring people, developing people, managing people, managing a profit and loss statement, being able to, develop those people, execute a marketing plan, so many other things other than the actual skill. You're going to hire people to do that. They want mini CEOs that are going to manage and grow the business. That's what most franchisors are looking for.
100%. Totally agree, Dana. So those are my questions. I'll leave the floor open. Is there anything else you'd like to say, maybe to someone that's unsure but thinking about getting into business for themselves and leaving the corporate life that they've been in for a long time? Anything you'd like to say to those people?
Yeah, one quick thing that I would leave with is, it is scary. And, just to learn and explore, there's never any obligation, right? Nobody's going to make you do something. So even if you're thinking about it and you want to learn more, talk to somebody like myself. It doesn't hurt. It's a conversation. You're not held to anything. There's no obligation. Just, in addition to the exploration you're doing online, have a conversation with somebody that's in it and does it and can, give you a little bit more personalized advice on it. That can't hurt.
Absolutely. 100%. I recommend, anyone reaching out to Dana that's watching this and thinking about maybe exploring business ownership and franchising. So Dana, where can people find you and get in contact with you?
Simple. So my email address is dhall, HALL, @frannet.com. That's 2 N's, FRANNET. And that's the easiest way. And, again, happy to have a conversation, no obligation, and, see if it's something you want to consider.
Awesome. Dana, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks for the invite, Michael. Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you.
Take care.